desperately need to rebuild our connections with one another. That's the foundation on which, everything else comes. I really believe that we're living in the middle of a youth mental health crisis that's become the defining public health challenge of our time.
Online is measured. Her offline presence is fully heart first. You have 428 million followers on Instagram. That's a lot coming in. How do you navigate that complicated world?
I disabled all my comments on my photos on Instagram for only my friends. So I think I've created boundaries to help me. It was obviously people fussed about it, but they fuss about everything. So I felt empowered by doing that.
And I watched you look people in the eye, one after the next, one after the next. And I'm thinking to myself, someone who...
I am who I surround myself with.
I have to tell you, just before I came over here, I had the privilege of meeting a really cute, nice guy.
I heard.
His name's Benny Blanco. When you said you're the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time with,
yeah.
So choose wisely. You're choosing wisely. Like, I felt that right away.
It feels wonderful. He's wonderful.
And when it comes to her own mental health journey, Selena is proud of being a work in progress.
I will always be working on my mental health, and I will always evolve. I'm not better or worse than anyone. I'm simply just a person living and surviving every day.
Surviving. That's a big word.
Yeah, it's having to take steps to make yourself healthy takes a lot of work.
There is something about speaking something out loud, even if it's a whisper,
yes.
Quietly inside yourself, even if it's in the bathroom mirror, by the way.
It's true.
Oh, when you are looking in the bathroom mirror, what do you see?
Someone who's waking up every day and trying her best. And that's all I could ask for at the end of the day.
She is. We should mention advocating for mental health is a core pillar of Selena's makeup brand. It's called Rare Beauty, and we were there during the Rare Beauty Impact Fund's Mental Health Summit. They raised, by the way, more than $100 million to expand access to mental health services and education for young people. And get this, they reach an average of 1 million young people every single year. So this is a calling. She went from a profession, which she loved, which is singing, that she's still doing, to a calling, and you can feel it.
It's huge too, because I mean, she has this 487 billion followers or whatever
exactly.
it is. For her to say, yeah, I have bipolar, yeah, I've struggled, yeah,
yes.
Okay, I didn't understand myself.
Yes.
Just to even put words to that and let others hear that.
She was telling me about people who told her, like, you saved my life.
Yeah.
That watching you saved me. So anyway, she is walking the walk.
Good for her.
Yeah.
An internet sensation. It's so funny because I do think a lot of people think I'll be fixed, I'll be healed, I'll be better if I meet him, if I meet her. And that's what I've been waiting for. But that's not the way it works.
That was me.
Yeah.
For decades of relationships, I kept feeling very emotionally disconnected from every partner I was with. Continued to assume it was what they were doing or not doing that was causing the problem.
Right.
The relationship would end, onward I would go, trying to find this perfect person where I wouldn't feel that way, and really came to understand for me somewhere in my early 30s how I was so focused on achievement and the roles I was playing for other people, and so disconnected from my own emotions that in reality I wasn't open to emotional connection or support at all.
Yeah, and this new book is all about sort of finding the love in yourself, right? Like, as you just said, you can't blame the other person when you're not feeling fulfilled. How did you kind of break down old patterns and old things to figure out what it was that was lacking or what was triggering you?
I think the first thing to understand is that the most foundational relationship is the relationship that we have with ourselves. Because even when asked about this book, is it for me if I'm not in a relationship? And the reality of it is the self, what we come to believe about ourselves, was formed in our earliest relationships based on what we were made to think or believe from typically the caregivers or parents around us. The way we navigate our emotions or express ourselves emotionally was impacted by how emotionally attuned someone else was to us, how safe we felt and how consistently we were soothed by that person. And then ultimately the way we're showing up with other people, how we're connecting or relating is directly related to what we had to do or stop doing in those earliest relationships to maintain those connections, and we continue to repeat those patterns throughout life.
It's so funny because there was someone who said that when you're young, sometimes you're given a life sentence, like a sentence. Someone calls you something, and you carry that inside, and that becomes how you define yourself. And to try to pull that up by the roots, like it sounds easy, like I want to get rid of old patterns, but pulling up old stuff from the roots is not easy. How do you even go about that?
And I think a lot of us get frustrated if we read the self-help books or hear about just repeat that you're worthy. You feel worthy, though. When we're talking about beliefs, we are talking about these embedded, I call them neurophysiological networks that are not just the thoughts running through our mind on repeat, the often critical negative narratives that we've maybe heard directly or indirectly spoken about, into physiological experiences in our body. And that for me was the big shift, learning about the body, about the nervous system, how these are housed inside of us, repeated subconsciously. And so,
and it's so interesting because you'd already gotten your doctorate, you were practicing, you'd been in college and school for psychology for a decade. Yes, and yet you hadn't learned most of this stuff.
The schooling, and I'm seeing a shift very gratefully, I think, in the field generally, though this idea of coming into a room, which of course is helpful to have a safe space where we can share about our past, our present, our future worries, our concerns, is part of the journey. Though if we're not understanding how much these beliefs are embedded in us, how much we are repeating these subconscious patterns, which for me was not even spoken about outside of the fact that we have a nervous system and it, kind of communicates between our mind and our body. There was no other talk of it. And so I felt really disempowered.
I think what's interesting, there's such a physicality to getting stuff out of your system. And I think people are like, well, that, I have to think about it and get, you can literally use your body to get rid of some of that stuff.
I mean, to really simplify it, to create change, we have to begin to make new choices. And I think the biggest new choice that most of us as adults can benefit from making it out in our physical body to tolerate stress and upsetting emotions.
So what would you do? I saw the bowl of ice. I was like, that's a great tip. But what can people do to try to shake it up?
I think first learning and noticing in your body when you are experiencing a stress reaction, when your muscles are getting tense, when your heart rate is quickening, when your breath is shifting, all of that is an indicator that my body is stressed. We don't want to avoid stress. So many of us in that moment distract our attention away or focus our attention outward or start scrolling on social media. It's about
something.
Dedicating and taking those conscious moments.
And listening to it, right?
Listening to it, because in those moments, that's where we're going to be much more likely to have those habitual reactions, to start screaming and yelling, saying things that we don't mean, to be distracted or disconnected, or even like me, I spent many years just shut down completely. I call it in my spaceship, and we shame ourselves.
In your spaceship?
We don't, in my spaceship, kind of hovering above myself, really good at going about the motions, successfully achieving things in my life, being in all these partnerships, yet, like I said earlier, so emotionally disconnected.
Well, there are some real questions.